The marble streets are silent. The air's still columns rise like guardians of memory, and if you listen, you will hear it. A voice carried across centuries, the voice of the Stoics. They did not write for fame. They did not write for applause. They wrote for survival, palaces alike for women and children, living through grief and fire. For anyone who ever asked, "How do I endure? How do I live without regret?" Their wisdom is not locked in books. It is carved in the marrow of human struggle. It speaks in whispers when the world grows loud. It reminds you that, though storms rage outside, there is still a place within you that cannot be broken. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor yet a student of his own mind. Seneca, a statesman, yet a man who knew fortune's cruelty. Epictetus, a slave, yet freer than most kings. They lived different lives but spoke one truth, that freedom is not in power or possessions. It is not in praise or reputation. It is in the discipline of the soul. This is not theory. It is not distant history. It is a mirror, and if you are willing to look into it, you will never see yourself the same again. Power over the mind. In the heart of war, Marcus Aurelius sat alone in his tent. The weight of an empire pressed against his shoulders. Armies awaited his command, enemies plotted his fall. The fate of Rome itself seemed to balance on his word, and yet in the silence, he did not write about conquest. He did not write about politics or strategy. He wrote about the mind. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The emperor who commanded millions knew the limits of control. He could order soldiers into battle. He could crush rebellions. He could raise monuments that touched the sky. But he could not control what tomorrow would bring. He could not control the storms that would batter his camp. He could not control the betrayals that festered in secret halls, and he could not control the slow march of death that awaited even him. So he turned inward to the one kingdom that could never be invaded. The mind, look at your own life. How much of your energy is wasted, chasing what is not yours to command? You rehearse conversations that may never happen. You replay insults long after the voices have gone quiet. You chase approval from people who may never give it. You grip tightly to an image of how life should look, while the life already unfolding slips away. The Stoics called this slavery, because if your peace depends on the moods of others, if your worth depends on the rise and fall of fortune, if your happiness depends on tomorrow, then you are chained. What is truly yours? Your thoughts, your choices, your responses. What is not? Everything else. Epictetus taught this lesson with chains around his wrists. He was beaten. He was mocked. He was powerless in body, but his mind was his own kingdom. He said, "No one is free who is not master of himself." Discipline of the mind is not harshness, it is liberation, because when you master your inner world, you no longer dance to the tune of chaos. Insults cannot wound you unless you let them. Loss cannot destroy you. If you refuse to collapse, fortune cannot corrupt you. If you know it was never yours to keep. Think of a tree in a storm. Branches whipped, leaves stripped, yet roots unmoved. That is the mind trained in discipline. Most of us live like leaves, tossed by every gust of wind, dependent on what others say, trapped by what the future may bring. We mistake reaction for strength. We mistake noise for power. But Marcus Aurelius knew better. He knew that empires fall, that applause fades, that even an emperor dies, but character remains. So the question is not what you control out there. The question is what you control in here. Do you command your own thoughts? Do you govern your reactions? Do you choose your values? because the one who does is free in every prison, and the one who does not is a prisoner, even in a palace. The Stoics invite you to draw a line across your life. On one side, what belongs to you. On the other, what does not. And to guard that line with discipline. When anger rises, ask, is this mine to hold? When fear grows, ask, is this within my command? When resentment poisons, ask, does this belong to me? If yes, hold it with strength. If not, release it with grace. This is power over the mind, not absolute control, but clear sight, not perfection, but practice, not conquest of the world, but liberation of the self. Marcus Aurelius carried this practice like armor, not to escape his duties, but to endure them, not to abandon his empire, but to serve it more steadily, because he knew that to rule others you must first rule yourself, and so must you. Your empire may not be Rome, but it is no less heavy. It is the empire of your family, your work, your dreams, your fears. And if you cannot command your own thoughts, how will you ever command your life? The Stoics remind you, you cannot stop storms, but you can stand like the rooted tree. You cannot control betrayal, but you can remain unbroken. You cannot guarantee tomorrow, but you can choose today. The mind is your first battlefield, your first kingdom, your first victory. And if you win here, you are never truly defeated. The Art of Letting Go. Seneca once wrote, "It is not the man who has too little who is poor, but the one who hankers after more." A man of immense wealth, influence, and power, Seneca knew how fragile fortune could be. He had seen friends rise to glory and fall to ruin. He had felt the sting of betrayal and the emptiness of possessions. And still he understood, the deepest poverty is not lacking, but clinging. Think of your own hands. How many things do you hold so tightly that you can no longer breathe? You carry the weight of old betrayals, the shadow of dreams that never came to pass, the echo of words you cannot unsay, the craving for recognition that never arrives. The Stoics do not tell you to stop caring. They do not command you to harden your heart until nothing moves you. Instead, they remind you to see clearly, to hold gently, and to let go when the time comes. Life is like water, cupped in your palms. For a moment it rests still, but the tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips away. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. To most these words sound heavy, but to the Stoic they are liberation. They remind us that everything is borrowed. Every possession, every relationship, every breath, and because all is borrowed, we are free to release it without despair. This is not weakness, it is courage. To open your hands in a world that commands you to grip tighter is an act of strength. Epictetus, the slave-turned teacher, understood this truth. With every scar on his body, he said, "Do not seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do, and your life will flow well." This is not resignation, it is alignment. It is no longer fighting the river, but flowing with it. Ask yourself how much of your pain comes from demanding the past be different, from demanding others treat you the way you treat them, from demanding that life match the script you wrote in your mind. But the Stoics knew you do not write the script of the world. You only write your own lines, your choices, your values, your responses. Everything else belongs to fate. And when you stop clinging, you do not lose everything. You gain peace. The man who releases resentment is free. The woman who lets go of control is calm. The soul that accepts loss walks unafraid. Think of a man who grips a burning coal in anger. He burns only himself. Think of the woman who refuses to release betrayal. She chains herself to a past that will never return. Think of the child who clings to a broken toy. He misses the gift already waiting before him. So it is with us. Seneca reminded himself daily. You lose nothing when you lose illusions. You lose nothing when you let go of what was never truly yours. The house may collapse. The fortune may vanish. The crowd may turn against you. But if you have learned the art of letting go, you remain untouched. This practice is not performed once. It is not a single act of surrender. It is a discipline. It must be repeated each morning and each night until it becomes your nature. Ask yourself each day, is this mine to control? If yes, hold it with strength. If not, release it with grace. This is how you become untouchable. When you know how to let go, you cannot be manipulated. You cannot be enslaved by desire. You cannot be trapped by fear. You are light. You are free. Marcus Aurelius would walk through the palaces of Rome and whisper to himself, "You are a soul carrying a corpse." Not to despair, but to remember. Not to cling to titles. Not to cling to possessions. Not to cling even to the body itself. Cling instead to virtue, to truth, to the flame within you that cannot be stolen or broken. Because the art of letting go is not the art of losing, it is the art of living. Only with open hands can you receive the fullness of the present moment. Release the past. Release the illusions. Release the hunger for what was never yours. Stand here now, unburdened, awake. This is freedom, not a life without loss, but a life without chains. Time is sacred wealth, Seneca once wrote in a letter to a friend. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. He saw clearly what most refuse to admit. That time is not simply passing, it is being spent. Every moment is currency. Every breath is a coin. Unlike gold or silver, once it is gone, it can never return. We guard our money. We lock our houses. We protect our possessions with alarms and passwords. Yet we give away our time as if it were endless. We trade hours for distractions. We surrender days to resentment. We scatter years chasing approval. But time is the only true wealth. Seneca was one of the wealthiest men in Rome. Yet even he admitted wealth could be stripped in an instant. Fortune is fickle, titles are temporary, but time once lost is lost forever. Ask yourself, if a thief stole your gold, you would be outraged. If a stranger broke into your house, you would call for help. But how many strangers steal your hours each day without resistance? How often do you hand over your attention to trivial arguments, to shallow noise, to empty pursuits? The Stoics teach that to value your time is to value your life, because they are the same. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journals late at night, when the city slept, "Do not act as if you had 10,000 years to throw away. Death stands over you while you live. While it is in your power, be good." These are not words of despair. They are words of urgency. Reminder that tomorrow is not promised, and yesterday cannot be reclaimed. The only wealth you possess is this moment. How will you spend it? The untrained mind spends time like a gambler, throwing coins on every table, hoping for a return but finding only loss. The disciplined mind spends it with clarity, investing in what cannot be taken away. Virtue, wisdom, presence. Epictetus taught his students that every decision was an exchange. If you give your time to anger, you lose peace. If you give your time to fear, you lose courage. If you give your time to distraction, you lose the life that could have been lived. So guard your time as you would guard your most precious treasure. Because it is, imagine for a moment that each morning a messenger placed a bag of coins in your hands, not gold, but hours, 24 each day, no more, no less. And at midnight, whatever you did not spend disappears forever. Would you waste them on bitterness? Would you throw them away in gossip? Would you trade them for the empty approval of strangers, or would you spend them on the things that matter, on love, on growth, on gratitude, on becoming the soul you are meant to be? The Stoics remind us that death is not the enemy. Wasted life is the fear of death, makes us cling desperately, but the awareness of death makes us live deliberately. Seneca said, "Life is long if you know how to use it." The truth is most of us do not. We act as if we have forever. We delay what we know is important. We sacrifice the sacred for the urgent. We trade the eternal for the immediate. But the clock does not pause. The river does not stop flowing. Time is not cruel. Time is honest. It does not deceive. It simply reminds you that every moment is a choice. The Stoics ask you to look at your life and ask, what is worth my days? What is worth the only wealth I will never recover? If you spend your hours with wisdom, if you give your moments to love, if you dedicate your days to growth, then even if your life is short, it will be full. But if you waste it, if you scatter your time on the meaningless, then even if you live long, you will have died young. The choice is always in your hands. Do not wait for tragedy to awaken you. Do not wait for loss to remind you what was valuable. Do not wait for death to teach you how to live. Guard your time now. Spend it on what matters. Treat it as sacred wealth, because in the end your life will not be measured by what you owned, or by what you built, or by how loud the world applauded. It will be measured by how you used the hours placed in your hands. And once you see time for what it is, you will live with urgency, but without panic. You will live with gratitude, but without fear. You will live awake. This is the wealth no thief can steal. This is the treasure already in your pocket. This is the reminder of the Stoics. Time is sacred. Spend it well. Finding strength in pain. There is a truth the Stoics faced with unflinching eyes, that life is not gentle. It cuts, it burns, it wounds, and yet within that suffering they discovered a paradox, that pain can break you, or it can build you. Epictetus understood this in his own flesh, born into slavery, his body beaten, his freedom stolen. He carried scars that would last his entire life. Yet he said calmly, "Do not look for things to happen the way you want. Rather wish them to happen as they do, and your life will flow well." This was not resignation. It was strength. It was the transformation of pain into fuel. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journals, surrounded by war and plague, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He looked at obstacles not as curses, but as teachers. Every hardship, an invitation to grow stronger. Every wound, an opening for courage. Think of fire. Throw water upon it, and it sputters, but throw dry wood, and it rises higher. So it is with the soul. Pain does not extinguish it, if you feed it with resilience. But how do you face pain without collapse? The Stoics taught first, you must stop asking why me, as if suffering is a punishment handed out by fate. Pain is not personal, it is universal. To be human is to be cut. To be human is to lose. To be human is to bleed. When you stop treating pain as an injustice, you can begin to treat it as a teacher. Ask, what is this pain showing me? What weakness is it burning away? What strength is it calling forth? A muscle torn in training grows back, stronger. A heart broken by loss grows deeper in compassion. A mind tested by difficulty grows steadier in wisdom. The Stoics knew this. Seneca wrote in exile, cut off from Rome, his wealth threatened, his safety uncertain. Fire tests gold, adversity tests the brave. He did not deny the hurt, but he refused to let the hurt define him. This is the choice each of us holds. Pain arrives uninvited, but what we do with it is ours. Some collapse, some grow bitter, some live as victims long after the wound has healed, but some rise, some take the very thing meant to break them and use it as the foundation of unshakable strength. It is not easy. The instinct is to avoid pain, to run from it, to numb it, to deny it. But the Stoics invite you to look directly at it, to hold it in your hands, to see it for what it is. Not a curse, but a forge. The blacksmith does not fear the fire. He places iron into it, knowing that only through heat and hammer will it become the blade. So too, with the soul, when loss comes, when illness strikes, when failure crashes down, ask not why me, but what now? What can I build with this? What can I become through this? Marcus Aurelius asked himself each morning, what can I endure? Can I bear? What strength can be found in this day's trials? And in asking he found freedom, because no pain could define him, only his response could. This is not denial of suffering. The Stoics wept, the Stoics bled. They knew grief as deeply as anyone, but they refused to bow before it, refused to let it rule them. Pain is real, but so is your power. The wound is deep, but so is your courage. The night is long, but so is your endurance. Strength is not the absence of suffering. It is the presence of meaning in the midst of it. So when pain comes, do not ask to be spared. Ask to be sharpened. Do not ask for the fire to die. Ask for the strength to walk through it. Do not curse the obstacle. Turn it into the path. This is how the Stoics endured exile, war chains, and death with dignity, not by pretending life was easy, but by transforming hardship into honor. So look at your own scars, not as signs of weakness, but as proof of survival. Look at your own suffering, not as meaningless cruelty, but as the forge that shapes you. The pain that once threatened to destroy you can become the very strength that saves you, if you let it. This is the paradox the Stoics discovered, that the obstacle is not the end, it is the beginning. What stands in the way becomes the way. The discipline of presence. The Stoics often spoke of the present moment as if it were a sacred altar, because they knew most suffering comes not from what is happening now, but from the mind's wandering, dragged backward into regret, dragged forward into fear. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal, as a reminder to himself, confine yourself to the present. He was emperor of Rome, with the burden of an empire on his shoulders, and yet he knew the only weight he could truly carry was the weight of now. Think of your own life. How much pain do you carry from memories you cannot change? Much fear do you feel from futures that have not arrived? Your body sits here in this moment, but your mind runs endlessly elsewhere, and so peace always feels just out of reach. The Stoics call this madness, to lose what you have, the present by obsessing over what is gone, the past or what is uncertain, the future. Epictetus warned his students, when you are disturbed, it is not things themselves that trouble you, but your judgments about them, and most of those judgments live not in reality, but in imagination, in the stories we tell ourselves about yesterday and tomorrow. Practice presence is to return to what is real, to train the mind like a wandering animal until it learns to sit still. This is not easy. The mind is restless. It leaps forward chasing outcomes. It runs backward replaying mistakes. But the Stoics invite you to leash it gently, again and again, until it learns to stay. How? First by breath. For breath cannot be taken yesterday, and it cannot be taken tomorrow. It can only be taken now. When you breathe deeply, you anchor yourself to presence. Second, by attention, to notice the weight of your feet on the ground, the sound of the world around you, the sensation of this moment as it truly is, not as you fear or wish it to be. Third, by choice, because presence is not simply noticing, it is deciding. Deciding to place your energy where you are, deciding to meet what is here with calm, rather than abandon it for illusions. Seneca said, "Life is very short and anxious for those who forget the past, neglect the present, and fear the future. The one who forgets the present loses everything, because the present is all there ever truly is." But presence is not just about peace, it is about power, because you cannot act in yesterday, and you cannot act in tomorrow. You can only act now. The disciplined mind returns again and again to the only field where victory can be won. This moment, imagine a soldier in battle, staring behind him at past defeats, or staring ahead at fears of what may come. He is lost. But the soldier who keeps his eyes on the fight before him stands a chance to endure. So it is with us. Presence sharpens courage, because fear belongs to the future. Presence softens grief, because regret belongs to the past. Presence awakens gratitude, because joy can only be tasted here. The Stoics were not dreamers. They did not float above life. They stood firmly in it. They ate, they worked, they bled, and in every act they asked, "Am I here? Am I awake? Am I present?" This discipline is not passive. It is not escape from reality. It is immersion in reality. It is facing what is actually before you rather than what your mind invents. So when anxiety rises, do not run forward into imagined disasters. Return to the ground beneath your feet. When regret poisons, do not run backward into what cannot be undone. Return to the breath moving through your chest. When distraction pulls you in every direction, choose presence. Choose to be here, because the truth is simple. The present moment is the only place where life actually happens. Miss it, and you miss everything. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself often, give yourself a gift. The present moment, not wealth, not applause, not fortune, but presence, because in presence, all wealth is realized. In presence, all applause fades to silence. In presence, all fortune is irrelevant. Presence is freedom from the chains of what was, from the illusions of what might be, from the endless noise of a world that demands you live everywhere but here. So train yourself daily, with breath, with awareness, with choice, to return to now. Because once you master this discipline, life no longer passes you by. You no longer live half awake. You no longer waste your days lost in shadows. You live fully. You live deliberately. Live here. This is the discipline of presence, the practice that transforms ordinary days into sacred ones, the practice that turns fleeting time into eternal life. Because the present moment is not small, it is infinite. It is all there is, and once you step into it, you finally come home. Boundaries are self-respect. The Stoics lived in a world of emperors and mobs, a world where demands never ceased, and expectations pressed from every side. And yet they understood a truth most still forget, that to live without boundaries is to live without self. Seneca once wrote, "No man can have a peaceful life who thinks too much about lengthening it rather than about using it." And part of using life well is choosing what you will give your time and energy to, and what you will not. Boundaries are not walls of anger, they are walls of clarity. They say, "Here is who I am. Here is what I value. Here is where I end, and the world begins. Without them you are scattered. Without them you are consumed. Without them you lose yourself in the endless demands of others. Think of fire. Contained it warms and gives light. Uncontained it destroys. So too with your time, your energy, your soul. The Stoics warned against the slavery of people-pleasing, because when you spend your life trying to satisfy every demand, you forget what is yours to protect. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." He knew that the moment you set boundaries, some will not understand. Some will call you cold. Some will call you selfish. But if you live only to be understood, you will never be free. True freedom is to live aligned with virtue, not with approval. Marcus Aurelius, as emperor, could have spent every waking moment chasing favor, every decision pulled by politics, every act bent to satisfy the crowd. But he reminded himself, be indifferent to what makes no difference. And so must you. Boundaries begin when you decide what matters most, and when you protect it fiercely. Your time is sacred wealth. Do not give it cheaply. Your peace is sacred ground. Do not let it be trampled. Your values are sacred fire. Do not let them be extinguished. This is not cruelty. This is respect, not just for yourself, but for others. Because only when you protect your center can you give from it without resentment. How many times do you say yes when you mean no? How many times do you remain silent when you should speak? How many times do you betray yourself to keep the peace? And in doing so you lose the very peace you hope to protect. The Stoics remind us that peace without boundaries is illusion. You may avoid conflict for a time, but inside your soul grows restless. Your dignity erodes. Your self is forgotten. To live with boundaries is to reclaim yourself. But boundaries are not built once. They are practiced daily. Every time you pause and ask, does this align with my values? Does this honor my time? Does this protect my peace? If yes, step forward. If no, step back. It is a discipline of courage, because the world will resist. It is easier to drift with the current of demands than to plant your feet in the ground of clarity. But the one who learns to say no with calm, to say yes with intention, to stand firm without anger, that one walks free. Seneca warned, associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. The process is mutual. Boundaries are not isolation. They are choosing who enters your life. They are choosing voices that strengthen rather than voices that weaken. Because without boundaries, even the strongest soul is consumed by noise. But with them, even the quietest soul can live with power. Ask yourself now, what do you allow into your life that poisons you? What do you allow that steals your time, your dignity, your peace? What have you been too afraid to say no to? And what would change if you finally drew the line? The Stoics lived in a world of chaos, but they carved out islands of clarity. You can too, not by shutting out the world entirely, but by choosing how and when it enters. This is the paradox of boundaries. They do not imprison you, they free you, because once you stop living at the mercy of others, you begin to live at the command of your values. So draw the line, not in anger, but in strength, not to push away, but to protect, not to shrink, but to stand tall, because boundaries are not selfish. Boundaries are self-respect, and without them, you lose not only yourself, but the life you were meant to live. Love without attachment. The Stoics are often misunderstood as cold and distant, as if to live without being ruled by passion is to live without love. But the truth is the opposite. They knew that love is most powerful when it is free. Epictetus once said, "When you kiss your child, say to yourself, 'He may not be here tomorrow, do not tempt fate.' Instead, let your affection run true and unrestrained." This was not cruelty, it was clarity. He was reminding us that to love someone is to recognize their impermanence, to treasure them not because they are guaranteed, but because they are. Fleeting attachment is the desire to control. It is the demand that what we love must never change. But change is inevitable, and so attachment leads to fear and suffering. Love without attachment is different. It does not cling, it does not demand, it does not possess. It sees clearly, it accepts fully, it treasures deeply, without chains. Marcus Aurelius loved his children, his wife, his friends, and yet in his journal he reminded himself, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good." Love for him was not forever, it was now, to love today, to cherish this moment, because tomorrow may not come. Think of a flower. If you try to lock it away to preserve it, you crush it. But if you admire it in the sunlight, as it is, its beauty is real, even if it fades tomorrow. Love is like this. Attachment says, "I need you to stay." Love says, "I am grateful. You are here." Attachment says, "You belong to me." Love says, "You are free, and I cherish you." The Stoics knew that relationships without this freedom become prisons. We cling too tightly. We expect others to complete us. We demand they meet every need and never change. But people are not possessions. They are souls walking their own paths. And the deepest love is to walk beside them, without trying to chain them. Seneca wrote in a letter to a friend, "If you wish to be loved, love." He understood love is not earned by control. It is offered by freedom. It is nourished by respect. How many of your relationships are strained by attachment, by demands unspoken, by fears of loss, that become cages of control? The Stoics invite you to loosen your grip, to replace demand with gratitude, to replace possession with presence. This does not make love weaker, it makes it purer, because you are no longer loving for what you can get. You are loving for what you can give. Love without attachment is not indifferent. It is deeper because it does not vanish when circumstances change. It does not collapse when life shifts. It remains steady because it was never built on possession in the first place. Epictetus warned his students that people and things will come and go. If you cling, you will suffer. If you accept, you will be free. And in that freedom you will love more fiercely, because you are not distracted by fear. Think of the parent who clings so tightly to their child, they crush their spirit. Think of the lover who clings so tightly to their partner, they suffocate their joy. Think of the friend who clings so tightly they become a burden. This is not love. This is attachment, dressed as love. But think of the parent who releases their child to grow. The lover who cherishes without control. The friend who supports without possession. This is love in its highest form. The Stoics remind us, love is not weakened by freedom, it is strengthened by it. So when you look at those you love, do not ask, how can I hold them forever? Ask instead, how can I cherish them fully now? Do not ask, how can they complete me? Ask, how can I walk beside them as a whole soul myself? Love without attachment frees you from the terror of loss, because you know loss will come, and that knowledge makes every moment more sacred, every embrace more real, every word more alive. This is why Epictetus told his students to kiss their children, as if it might be the last time, not to sadden the heart, but to awaken it, to strip away the illusion of forever, so that gratitude could flood in where fear once lived. To love without attachment is to stand open-handed, to say you are free. I cannot keep you, but while you are here, I will love you with everything in me, and when the time comes to let go, I will grieve, but I will not collapse. Because my love was never built on possession, it was built on presence. This is the freedom of Stoic love, not coldness, not distance, but a love so fierce, it needs no chains. A love so pure, it is not afraid of endings. A love so present, it cannot be broken by tomorrow. So love deeply, love openly, love freely, without attachment, without possession, without fear, because only then do you truly love. Learning how to die death was the subject the Stoics returned to more than any other, not out of morbid fascination, but out of clarity, because to ignore death is to live asleep, and to remember death is to live awake. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every day, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. He was emperor of the greatest empire of his age, surrounded by power, by wealth, by endless demands, and yet each morning he whispered to himself, remember you will die. Memento mori. Why? Because only in remembering death do we learn how to live. Seneca wrote, it is not that we have a short life, but that we waste much of it. Life is long enough if it is lived well. He saw that men fear death because they never truly live. They chase tomorrow while abandoning today. They cling to illusions while ignoring what is real. They act as if life were endless, and so they squander it. Then when death arrives, they panic at its suddenness. But death is never sudden. It has been with you since the moment you were born. Every breath, a step closer. Every sunrise, a reminder. To the Stoics, this is not cause for despair. It is cause for gratitude, because the awareness of death sharpens life. It cuts through the trivial. It reminds you what matters. Epictetus told his students not to fear death, but to fear never living well. Death is nothing frightening, but the opinion that death is frightening is what is frightening. Is not death itself that terrifies us. It is our thoughts about it, our refusal to look at it, our desperate attempt to pretend it is not coming. But what happens when you face it directly, when you accept it as part of life? You are freed, because the one who no longer fears death, no longer fears living. Think of the soldier who knows each day may be his last. He does not waste time on trivial quarrels. He does not cling to possessions. He does not delay what matters. He lives with intensity because he knows time is short. You do not need a battlefield to live this way. You only need to remember you are mortal. This is why the Stoics practiced memento mori, to carry death not as a curse but as a compass, to measure choices not against endless time but against limited breaths. Ask yourself, if today were your last, would you still waste it in anger? If tonight were your last, would you still cling to grudges? If this hour were your last, would you still scroll mindlessly? Or would you finally awaken? Would you finally forgive? Would you finally love without hesitation? The Stoics invite you to live as if death walks beside you, not to terrify you, but to steady you, not to steal your joy, but to deepen it. Because when you know you will die, you stop pretending you are infinite. And when you stop pretending you are infinite, you start living as if each moment is sacred. Marcus Aurelius, in the midst of war, wrote, think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what is left and live it properly. To the Stoics, death is not the enemy. It is the boundary that gives life shape. It is the reminder that your days are a gift, not a guarantee. It is the teacher that whispers, "Do not delay." Seneca said wisely, "He suffers more than death who fears it." Fear of death robs you twice, once in life, once in dying. But acceptance robs you of nothing. It liberates you. So the practice of learning how to die is the practice of learning how to live, to forgive quickly, to love openly, to act with courage, to leave nothing unsaid, to live each day complete in itself, because one day will be your last. But you do not know which, so live them all as if they were. This is not despair. It is gratitude, sharpened into urgency. It is joy without illusion. It is life without delay. The Stoics looked at death, not with fear, but with calm. And in that calm they found freedom. So let death walk beside you, not as an enemy, but as a teacher, not as a thief, but as a guide. Because only when you learn how to die, do you finally learn how to live. The practice of freedom. Freedom is a word shouted in streets and carved into monuments. But the Stoics knew it was often misunderstood, because most men who call themselves free are still chained by fear, chained by desire, chained by the opinions of others. Epictetus knew this truth in his bones. He was born a slave, his body bound by another's will. And yet, he told his students calmly, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Freedom is not found in circumstances, it is found in the soul. You may live in a palace and still be enslaved. Enslaved by greed, always chasing. More enslaved by envy, always looking at others. Enslaved by anger, always reacting to insult. You may live in chains and still be free. If your mind is your own, if your choices remain yours. This is why the Stoics placed so much emphasis on mastery of the self. Because only when you are free, inside, can no force outside truly enslave you. Marcus Aurelius sat on the throne of Rome with armies at his command. But in his private journal, he reminded himself daily, "It is in your power to withdraw into yourself whenever you choose." Perfect tranquility within consists of the good ordering of the mind. The emperor did not find freedom in armies or titles. He found it in his ability to step back from the noise of the world and return to clarity of thought. Seneca too lived surrounded by wealth, influence and power. But he warned, "If you would be free, do not desire too much." Because desire is a prison with no walls. The more you crave, the tighter the chains. To practice freedom is to practice restraint, to want less, to need less, to recognize that you already hold what matters most within you. Freedom is not license to do whatever you wish. That is chaos. Freedom is the ability to live by your values, without being ruled by impulses or fears. Think of the addict. He does what he wishes again and again, but he is not free. He is enslaved to his wish. Think of the man who controls his appetite, his anger, his greed. He may deny himself many things, but he is free, because nothing owns him. This is the paradox of Stoic freedom. It comes not from indulgence, but from discipline, not from grasping, but from letting go. Ask yourself what owns you. What cravings control your steps? What fears dictate your silence? What opinions of others steer your choices? Each chain you break brings you closer to freedom. Each impulse you master expands your kingdom. Each fear you release makes you untouchable. Epictetus taught his students to pause before every action and ask, "Is this mine to choose? Is this aligned with virtue? If yes, it is freedom. If no, it is slavery." And freedom once found is unshakable. because it does not depend on governments or circumstances. It does not depend on wealth or luck. It depends only on the discipline of your soul. This is why the Stoics were unafraid of exile, unafraid of loss, unafraid even of death, because none of these could touch the inner freedom they had claimed. A tyrant may command your body, but he cannot command your integrity. Fortune may strip your possessions, but it cannot strip your character. Death may end your days, but it cannot touch the life you lived with courage. This is the practice of freedom, to build a soul no chain can hold. So do not ask, how free is my country? First ask, how free is my mind? Do not ask, what laws restrain me? First ask, what fears restrain me? Do not ask, who will give me freedom? Ask instead, how will I practice it daily? Because freedom is not granted, it is chosen. It is not delivered, it is cultivated. It is not a gift from the world, it is the discipline of the self. And once you find it, no one can take it from. This is why the Stoics smiled even in chains, why they walked calmly into exile, why they faced death without trembling, because they had already claimed the only freedom that matters, the freedom within. So practice it daily, by mastering your desires, by calming your fears, by holding your dignity above all else. This is true freedom, the freedom no tyrant can crush, the freedom no loss can steal, the freedom no death can end. The journey back home. The Stoics never promised a life without storms. They never promised safety or certainty or endless comfort. What they promised was something greater, a way back to yourself. From Marcus Aurelius, we learn power over the mind. From Seneca, we learn the art of letting go and the sacredness of time. From Epictetus, we learn strength in pain and the truth of freedom. And from all of them, we learn presence, boundaries, love without chains, and the courage to face death with calm. But what is the thread that binds them all? It is this, that life's greatest journey is not outward, not to wealth or fame or conquest, but inward, back to the soul that was always yours. The world will tell you otherwise. It will tell you to chase, to accumulate, to compete, to compare, to spend your days as if they were endless coins, to trade your peace for noise, your clarity for distraction, your dignity for applause. But the Stoics whisper across centuries, come back home, come back to what is truly yours, your choices, your character, your values, your soul. This journey is not easy. It requires discipline when the world demands indulgence. It requires courage when the world demands conformity. It requires silence when the world demands noise. But step by step, you return. You return each time you draw the line between what you control and what you do not. You return each time you release the chains of attachment and choose gratitude instead. You return each time you protect your time as sacred wealth and spend it with intention. You return each time you face pain, not as victim but as student. You return each time you love freely without possession. You return each time you remember death and therefore truly live. And slowly, you find that the home you sought was never far. It was always within you, buried under fear, buried under craving, buried under noise, but waiting to be uncovered. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that the soul has its own refuge, that no matter the chaos of armies and politics and plague, he could always return inward, and so can you. You do not need perfect conditions to begin. You do not need years of study or endless rituals. You only need to pause, to breathe, to ask, what belongs to me, what does not, and to choose wisely. This is the discipline of the Stoics, not to escape life, but to engage it fully. Not to become cold, but to burn with a steadier flame. Not to deny humanity, but to live it with courage, dignity, and love. And in this practice you will discover something rare, that you are unshakable in storms, you are calm in conflict, that you are free in every circumstance, that you are finally at home. Because to live as the Stoics lived is not to live perfectly, it is to live awake. The Stoics have given us a map, but the journey is yours. If their words stirred something in you, do not let it fade. When this video ends, take one idea, one practice, and live it today. Guard your time as sacred. Set one boundary with courage. Release one resentment that poisons you. Love someone without clinging. Stand in the present moment, fully awake. These are not small acts, they are revolutions of the soul. If you found wisdom here, share it with someone who needs it. Because like the Stoics themselves, these truths are not meant to be hoarded, but lived and passed on. And if you are ready to keep walking this path of philosophy and self-mastery, subscribe and join us for more, because this is only the beginning of the journey back to yourself. Remember, you hold no power over fortune, but you hold infinite power over yourself, and that is enough.